Welcome to the family with...
Go ahead. Your turn.
My turn?
Yeah, you're supposed to say Dave Nimmer.
I'm Dave Nimmer.
Mike Gelfand.
And Andy Bramford.
I should have prepped if it's my fault.
I told you to bring in Marcia Fleur. You wouldn't believe, you wouldn't listen to me.
No, she only comes for money, Tom.
That's the big dough. It is great to see you, man. One of the first things I ever did, I think, when I went on KQRS in 1986.
You were with Rosen, and we were trying to pitch an afternoon news show called Newsday, and you invited us to go on a pontoon ride / fishing trip on Lake Minnetonka, and I realized you invited 50 of your closest friends, and we weren't close to any fish at any point along the line, but we were able to talk about news and about what we were doing. And I thought, Jesus, this is a great opportunity.
And just to give you a little background, when I was working, I spent 5 weeks working on the copy desk of the Minneapolis Star, which was the afternoon paper.
Right.
And so after 3 weeks, I put in my resignation because I had an offer from the Wall Street Journal, and I would have been really stupid not to take it.
Sure.
And so I went into Nimmer's office, and I told him that I was leaving, and he thought about this for a moment. He said, "Mike, it's a lot easier to leave than it is to come back."
Oh.
And he was right, because I went back, but I didn't go to the Star. I went to the Tribune. It was a morning newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
But there's I didn't mean any offense toward Dave. It's just that the morning newspaper, let's face it, morning newspapers always had far more prestige than afternoon papers.
Well, and the copy desk was a haven for misfits and misanthropes. I mean, are you kidding?
Oh, man.
I mean, geez.
I got to tell you.
Gelfand was the only one on that copy desk under the age of 60.
Yeah.
And probably the only one who didn't have a drinking problem.
There was, I would have had a drinking problem if I kept that job. It was a sad sort of thing. And everybody had to be there at like 6:15 in the morning, I think it was.
That was good for you.
Something like that, right, Dave?
Yeah, it was an early shift. Those guys started somewhere, and there were those guys. There were no women on the copy desk, and I think they got there at 5 a.m. And I was surprised at how limited their range was. They didn't talk to other people.
No.
They were always critics, and they never got outside the building. As far as I'm concerned,
there was no camaraderie either.
No.
So I had to be there. I think I had to be there at like 6:30 maybe 6:30 or so in the morning. I should add, and that's not good for me. But you know that, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were like 6 or 7 of us at the, what do they call that table?
Oh, the rim.
The rim, yes.
Sitting around the rim.
Yeah.
The rim?
I know.
Yeah.
I did many rim jokes at the time.
I bet you did.
No one laughed. And, but there were like probably 7 of us. I never beat anyone to the rim in the 5 weeks there. I was always the last person to get there. God, it was great to leave that rim, I tell you.
Tom, when I taught journalism for 10 years at St. Thomas, and I realized that the common thread of all those kids who were sitting in class was the KQ morning show. This was kind of their first look at the world, which frightened me a little. And on the other hand, it also was a look into their world and the human condition. And I tried to get to you to come to talk to this class, but I couldn't get through the red tape. But I did get to Gelfand.
Yeah,
who came.
You had to settle.
Gelfand.
Yeah.
And I that one kid really got mad at me, didn't he?
Yeah, I did.
This kid said, Mr. Gelfand, I think he said that, or maybe he said, "Sir," if I were in an executive position. But anyway, he said, what's the secret to this show's incredible success? And I said, well, here's the thing. We identify the lowest denominator, and then we go under it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's a good idea.
And he didn't like that. I thought it was a pretty good joke. Well, because he was a listener. Well, you know how it was with our listeners.
Yes.
They sanctified the show. And he didn't
Mhm.
like hearing that. So after that, I just, I was sort of defeated.
I claim you guys also elected Tim Pawlenty governor. When
Yeah,
he
that
was
is
on,
true.
I
Yep.
recognized the fact that this was the most effective political communication that anyone could have. And he got it.
He knew it.
Oh yeah, he did.
Yeah, well, matter of fact, by coincidence, you bring that up because it's been a couple of years since it's happened. But I just had lunch with Tim Pawlenty and Norm Coleman last week. I hadn't seen them in quite a while. They're both off and doing other things now, of course. But I just, yeah, it was the highest rated morning show in the United States of America at one point, which you got to thank all the people of the 5-state area for that happening. But it just it caused it. Well, you were very successful in your career, and you find out as a Minnesotan that there are some people, because you succeeded without them, don't like you. And I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about anybody who succeeds without my help. I don't like them.
Hey, you're talking about Minnesota nice there.
Yeah, Minnesota nice. Any state that has to tell you they're nice. Look, I was born here, grew up here. I love Minnesota, but we do have an edge to us that you don't see in a lot of other places.
There's something about telling the truth. And one of the things that Gelfand invited me here to talk about was a humbling accident. And one of the things that got to me right away, and I'll start this off by saying it's every old man's nightmare, and it's just about a month ago. And I come back from a couple-day fishing trip, and I was pulling into a quick store to get some gas, and then to get a car wash that it turns out that I didn't need. And there was an 18-wheeler back blocking the entrance to the car wash. And the guy who was driving the 18-wheeler said he's gonna be a while.
What was he
And-
doing?
Well, he was unloading material for the bookstore. Okay.
All right.
And he said you could back out. And there was another entrance to the car wash.
Mhm.
So I took this 2013 Subaru Forester and I put it in reverse, and I looked around, and there was nobody in the parking lot behind me. So
Mhm.
I backed very carefully, and then I thought I tapped the brake. What I did is tap the accelerator,
Oh,
and the car
God.
shot backward. And then I jammed on the brakes, and the car went up over the berm. And I hit the brakes again, but it was not the brakes; it was the accelerator. And I
Oh,
went over 2 lanes of traffic on Old Hudson Road, over the median strip, touched the brake one more time over 2 more lanes of traffic, over another berm, and came to rest against the front window of a Mattress Firm. And the whole thing took about 45 seconds. And I'm thinking, I'm hitting the brake, and I'm hitting the accelerator. And I got out of the car, and I think, man, you've just destroyed your life. And then I shook the glass from my head, and I realized, one, I didn't get hurt, and two, that I hadn't hit anybody.
Was that from the
Mm.
windshield?
Yeah, the windshield and the
Oh,
glass
God.
from the window pane. I went through. I did not go into the front room of the Mattress Firm, but I broke the window, and there was glass all over the car. And I thought, geez, if there had been a kid on a bike, I'd have killed him.
yeah.
If there would have been a car on the road, I would have T-boned him. And there was a kind of moment where you said to yourself, my Lord, I just dodged a bullet. The other one is, how could I have done this? How could I have done this? And a woman came out from Mattress Firm, and she said, the first words were, how are you? And I said, I'm all right. She said, can I get you a chair? I said, yeah, I'd like this chair. And the kid brought out a bottle of water. And then the EMTs came and the ambulance, and my blood pressure. And Gelfand, you would have loved this. I was 200. And
That's high.
that's high.
I mean, but when I go to the doctor, it's the same. But then I'm worried they'll find out about my addictions.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, yes. It dropped quickly. And when the cops came, and there were 2 young police officers from Woodbury, and one of the kids, young guys, asked what happened, and I said, I'm going to tell you the truth. And then I kind of gritted my teeth and I said, I'm going to tell you the truth, the real truth. I would have loved to tell you that this car was being driven by a Haitian immigrant who had carjacked me. And I said, I would have loved to tell you the accelerator stuck, but I said, I did this. Each time I tried to tap the brake,
As a journalist,
I
Yeah.
said,
we tell the truth.
the car,
Oh,
the
here
car
we go.
accelerated. I told him that. I said, I tell the truth.
Yeah.
And the guy looked at me. He was writing it down, and he thanked me for telling the truth. And he said, and I said, I think I'm going to surrender my driver's license. And he said, well, you look in pretty good shape for an 84-year-old. And I said, for an 84-year-old who just drove through the window of a mattress firm.
Yeah, exactly.
And Tommy, I wanted to make sure that he knew that I was telling him the truth and I knew what happened.
Yeah.
I said the accelerator didn't stick.
Mhm.
I hit the accelerator by mistake and I did it 3 times. And I said the last 30 seconds, maybe 25 seconds of this, I was an observer. I had my left hand on the steering wheel and I was looking out through the rear window.
No,
And I was an observer.
I have a question. You've told me the story, but I never asked you this. But did your whole life sort of pass before you?
No.
So then you knew you were wrong.
I knew what I was doing, and I was embarrassed. I mean, I was thinking about this, and the only thought I had about myself after I got out is I was hoping that there was a news crew not there because I wouldn't have been important enough for a news track. I would have been a 30-second thing
What,
of an old dude getting out of a car.
maybe at the end of the you know how they always do some like uplifting thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they would have done with you. You would have been the
It wouldn't have been uplifting. It would have been some hapless
not for
old
you.
timer getting out of a car.
Well, yeah, but you know, but you survived. And the thing about Nimmer is, I don't believe, we've talked about this, Tom, but I don't believe in things like karma, because there's billionaires out there who are really horrible people, and you know, like if there was karma, they probably would not exist. But with Nimmer, I kind of believe it, because this is a guy on Christmas Eve when everybody else is celebrating, maybe having a couple little sips of brandy.
Mhm.
He's massaging the feet of the nuns.
See?
You mistake that.
It's true. I mean, this.
I could raise self-centeredness to an art form.
Well,
And here's the other one, self-pity. I could jump on that.
we all.
It
do.
was all about me for the first 40 years. Are you kidding? You
Well-
guys made a living on that.
Well,
you know,
what do you mean? By
It
that?
was all about you. You never had such a good time in your life as you were in your heyday here.
Well, yeah. Well, I had a lot of fun. I mean, I always had fun. Whatever. I mean, that's one reason my wife, I think, just couldn't stand the fact that but this is true of a lot of men, not so much of women. You know, we regard our jobs as just like fun. You know, we have fun in our jobs if we can. A lot of guys can't, but when we can, and you know, it's almost like we're not working, which obviously we are, but we turn it into something just like going to the ball game maybe, or playing poker or whatever. It's just fun. And so you're right about that. That is kind of self-centered.
I got to tell Andy a couple of things here, because Andy is turned 38.
Yep, sure am.
Turns 38 on Saturday. And I was really glad when you told me Dave was coming in, because I've been wanting to mention this for a long time. Andy, when I was your age, matter of fact, a little bit younger, I guess I was about 33 when I started at KQRS. But the one thing about media back then, particularly television media, there were great local shows on. Like, you know, Dave and Marcia had their show. They had the noon news. They had the morning news. They had the evening news. People do not realize, and they used to, but I don't think they do anymore, that Minneapolis-St. Paul was either number 1 or number 2 best news market in America. The only time maybe they got beat out once in a while was by Chicago.
Yeah.
Dave, would you agree with that? That this market, growing up with the Dave Moores of the world and the Ron Majors of the world, and I already brought up you and Marcia and several of these other shows, there was no better news market in America than this city.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought CCO had produced about a half a dozen people who were really good, including
Yep.
Phil Jones. I looked at those people. I thought, Tommy, I thought Shelby was one of the best reporters I ever met.
Of all time.
Yeah. I
Yep.
mean, he's grandiose and exaggerated, but the man was a really good
Hey,
reporter.
we're all friends of Shelby's.
Oh yeah, I just saw him over the weekend. He was at the Pavic Museum.
Yeah,
doing-
yours doing well.
Oh, you got to
Oh.
get him in here one of these.
Oh, I got
So Bernard, how are you doing with aging? So how does this? So how is it as you approach
It's
old
amazing.
age? Well, no, let me say senior statesman.
Senior statesman. There you go.
Mhm.
It is interesting. Well, one thing that was very, very, I guess, leaving behind the fact that we were all involved in radio and television back in the wonderful days. And before I move on, I just want to mention, I don't like the fact they don't do a lot of local news shows anymore on television. But then I found out, and Dave and I kind of talked a little bit about this, not this specifically, but people 45 and under do not watch television anymore. I mean, it's just amazing. And of course, you have people that are 45 and older that don't listen to podcasts. They only listen to the radio. So trying to find your niche right now is not very easy to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
I-
what's yours? What do you figure is yours right now?
I don't really have one yet. I'm really good at getting fired. That I figured.
Well, anybody who works in radio is going to get fired.
After
right?
37 years.
Well,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
not then. But
Not then.
Most people asked about because in your early radio days, you last about a year typically. Maybe
Yeah, a
two.
couple of years maybe.
And then it's like
No,
you
that's
know,
very true.
I worked at KUMP and Casper, Wyoming, and then they fired me, and then I went on to Fresno and all that sort of stuff. But it's
Right.
that's radio.
But I will tell you, you were just talking about Don Shelby. The Pavic Museum put on a Frankenstein show that was written by Dave Lee, who of course worked for WCCO
Wait a
Radio.
minute, Dave Lee?
Yeah.
Dave Lee was there,
Yeah.
and
Is
so
he
was
still puking?
no, very, very pleasant.
The real
guy.
Dave Lee.
So
So he's not puking.
not at all.
Oh.
No, he's not doing it all. He wrote this play, as a matter of fact.
I read that. It was pretty good, right?
I thought it was terrific.
Yeah.
So there was and I'll get to my point here very quickly, but you had Dave Lee standing next to him was the guy's name we just mentioned again? Don something.
Shelby, I
Shelby.
think it was.
Shelby was there.
Yeah.
You had all these
Kathy Wurzer was there.
Kathy Wurzer was there. Eric Escala was there. Freddie was there from KMOJ. God, I hadn't seen Freddie in a long time. But there were basically 8 people involved, all very well-known media people. And I didn't tell them I was coming. Catherine and I just bought tickets and, to support them and all the rest of it. But I don't know if this would have happened back in the old days. But I walked in and everybody from the Dave Lees of the world down to Kathy Wurzer and all 8 people that were there to do the show came over and gave me a big hug and said, my God, it's just so great.
Oh.
The times have changed quite a bit in that way, in a good way.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just so nice to just see all of those people with all of that. That's a lot of talent in one room. I will tell you that. But they could not have been nicer.
There was I like that. I like the idea of being able to trip across all of these boundaries. And it was also a reflection that I think of KQ at its best was lively and entertaining and edgy.
Yeah.
And those were the things that I wanted to see. If I wanted to, I still listen to NPR, but sometimes that's a chore. I wanted to put together a panorama of media I listened to, and KQ had to be part of that. That was what I
Oh,
always
very nice.
argued, because you guys disagreed. Because I wanted to hear that a little of that tension. So sometimes I wanted to hear the truth too, and somebody call it out.
And
You had to do that.
Mhm.
One
Yep.
thing we learned is that a little bit of tension goes a long way.
Yes, I get it.
I can see that.
Yeah, I had a story that happened at a Lunds and Byerly's, and it was about 10 maybe 10 or 8 years ago, I was standing at the counter checking out a basket full of groceries, and I was never a personality. I was a reporter, but a woman was standing ahead of me, and she had a big basket of stuff, and I had said something to the grocery clerk, and she turned around and looked at me, and then she looked at the clerk, and then she looked at me, and she pointed her index finger at me, and she said, "Didn't you used to be somebody?"
Thank you.
She said, "I thought, okay, it's now over."
Yeah.
I mean, you got to deal with that,
Oh,
and
sure.
nobody cares what you used to do. And I can't imagine having a business card, and the kids at St. Thomas had no regard for anything except whether or not you were interested in them and their careers. So that set you on a different path.
Well, one of the things that I learned, I've said this before, is that fame is fleeting and obscurity is forever.
Forever.
Yeah. Shelby told me that you made more doing voiceovers than I would make in my lifetime. And we were sitting at Tinker Field in Orlando, and you walked by, and I said, "Who?" He said, "That's Tom Renard." I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "He's making more in voiceovers than you'll ever make in your life." I said, "Geez, that's amazing."
I always used to. Tom never liked this, but this was a long time ago, and I would always say, like, I'd tell these little jokes that Tom didn't like, so I kept telling them. I'd say, "Yeah, and we went to the same bank," and I said, I went to the bank today, and they're flying the flag at half mast. And I couldn't figure out why. And I asked someone inside, why are you doing this? And they said, well, Tom took out some money today.
Very funny. Laugh it up, pal. That's all but you know what? That's this market, though, once again, to be able to come into a market like this. Dave Hamilton, I was sitting in New York, because that's where Catherine and I lived at the time. And the phone rang, and it was Dave Hamilton, the program director at KQRS. And I had just been told by my lovely wife, Catherine, that we were going to have a baby. And that baby right now is wearing a blue Royals shirt, sitting in the other room, running the show. And I thought, oh my God, we can't have a baby living at 20th Street and 2nd Avenue and the hubbub and all the rest of it. I put the phone down, and it rings. Dave Hamilton. "Hey, Tom, you have any interest in doing a KQ morning show?" I said, "Yeah, sounds good." I mean, the timing of the whole thing was unbelievable. So we came into town. The one thing about it is you did run into some people that just, if you get really successful in Minnesota, there are some people you just can never make happy. They just, I don't know why. See, with Gelfand, with Dave Nimmer, Andy, what he's doing now, he's very successful at what he does. I'm happy for people when they're successful. Why are some people not happy for you?
The thing about the morning show was it was all just sort of this giant, it was all Providence,
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing, I had left the newspaper with the buyout. You remember the buyout.
Oh, I do.
So I took the buyout. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I took the buyout because I was a young guy. I had a career ahead of me. And I was doing okay, but I was doing like 10 different gigs, like most of our kids do today, the gig thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you do anything there. Like if someone says, I want you to be the editor of our, well, let's just say this, because this happened, I was editing and writing a little bit for a gynecology newsletter. That'll tell you.
Well, you're an expert.
If it came across the transom, I learned a lot at the job.
I bet you did.
And,
yeah.
But if it came across the transom, you did it. And then I did a piece about Tom, because one of the gigs was I was.
So who did you do the piece for?
Well, Ad Age. I was a stringer for Ad Age. That was one of my better gigs, and I did a piece about Tom, and we got to be friends, and then I started doing little tiny things in the morning show, and for some reason, Tom and Dave liked it, and I wound up on that show. So, that's just like a career handed to me right in my lap. Nothing I was expecting or looking for.
No, you were not.
But,
yeah, that's true.
But it sure was great,
in the first years, there's also great good fortune. I mean, there was a sweetness about the show because you had the twins in the World Series.
Yeah.
Rosen
Yep.
was here. Yeah,
Yep.
you know, little Markey for president. There was a kind of energy about all of that
Mhm.
that tied together.
And the twins, I really wasn't so much that it was the twins. It could have been anything, but it was something that was people liked. It was good for the community. So it was embracing that was really embracing the whole concept of victory, which people were hungry for.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking, I like the fact that we're not through yet. I mean, I believe there's a kind of venue that the center of the universe stuff is gone. That's clear. But we have accumulated some wisdom and some marvelous mistakes. I mean, I realize I drove across 4 lanes of traffic. For Christ's
Yeah.
sakes. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Maybe your karma is used up. Though.
yeah, well, it could be. But I've learned something about the truth. I mean, look, it certainly frightened me to have people know what I was really like. That when I was insecure and that sometimes I was fearful. That when you're 5'5", I mean, geez, I never wanted to be one of those small dogs. I always wanted to be a black lab. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Jesus, I mean, you gotta face that stuff.
Thing
you know?
about the thing about him is that he'll say, "Oh yeah, I was selfish in this," but I'm 18 years old, and I'm working at the Daily,
Mhm.
and I'm having one of my 1,000 blueberry pancakes that I ate a year at Al's breakfast, and Nim walks in, and he says to me, I'm introduced to him, and he says, "Yeah," he said, "I saw that piece you did, in the Daily," and he said that was really some good writing.
Well,
And
see,
he didn't have to do that. I mean,
No.
who not many guys would do that.
you're right.
But so he was always very charitable.
Tommy broke in Nick Coleman Jr. And Gelfand was the mentor to Nick Coleman.
Hey,
for
come
crying
on,
out
I'll
loud.
deny
know.
that.
All right, that was not my fault.
Yeah, I know. I kind of figured.
And he was the thing about Nick was I don't know what happened to Nick. I mean,
What
because
did happen to him?
I don't know because he loved working at the Daily, and he was of course he was very good at what he did, and he had no training for it or anything.
Mhm.
And he was kind of he was almost upbeat, and then he got kind of cynical toward the end. I guess.
No,
It's
no,
that
no.
Irish stuff about resentments.
Yeah.
I don't get mad. I get even.
Yeah.
And we got a club that says carrying resentments too long is like drinking Drano, hoping the other guy will die.
Yeah,
You know,
I've experienced that. Not being the guy drinking it, but yeah, it's but I don't know, Nick. I always tried to kind of humor him,
Mhm.
find the Nick I knew, and I saw bits and pieces of it. I always figured just give him a potato, he'll be fine, right? These Irishmen.
So, Tommy, what's the wisdom you've acquired over 40 years of doing this? What do you know now that you didn't know then?
There are several different levels to that. There's no question about it. That some people, well, I'll give you an example. The timing of this is wonderful because when Mike came to me and said that he'd like to have you on the show and you were willing to do it, I mean, my God, I hadn't seen you in a few years, and it was because you and Marshall Wall was very, very nice to me. So that part of it becoming, I mean, it's kind of weird because the show blew up and it got very, very big. And I would get calls from Chicago and Los Angeles and New York. Hey, you want to come and do the morning show and blah, blah. It's like, no, I was born and raised in Minnesota. I'd like to do that and all the rest of it. And then as I mentioned before, I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time on this, but I did get too big. And in Minnesota, you don't want to do that. Getting big is one thing. Like Dave Moore handled it perfectly. He was huge, but you could never tell he was huge.
No, it was humility. It's humility.
Yes.
And humility is really in very short supply these days.
But I'll give you an example of what I'm talking. And I do think that people are meaner now than they've ever been in this country. They're so mean now. It's unbelievable. And it's on all sides, not just one. But I mean, yesterday, I got a call, I guess about 4 or 5, probably about a week ago, from this young woman who said her father was, going through some medical things and health things and all the rest of it. She said, "Is there any way you could give my father a call, because he's been listening to you for 40 years, 37 on the morning show, and a couple more years now at what you're doing today." And said, "Is there any way you could just pick up the phone and give him a call?" And I said, "No." She goes, "You can't?" And I said, "No. I can come and see him in person, though, and have lunch with him." Drove over yesterday. Dracula's. We were talking about Dracula's all morning long. Drkula. That's the name of the place. It's a bowling alley. They've got volleyball courts. They got bars. They got restaurants. The food was very, very good. But to walk in, his wife was there. He was there, and then their young daughter walked ahead of me, and I stopped, and because he didn't know I was coming. And to see just the look on his face, and you guys have seen it because obviously, well, Dave, I mean, you did television so many years, everybody knew who you were. But the look on his face, like he could not believe that anyone, not just a TV personality or a radio guy or a news reporter, whatever, but that anyone would take the time to come and see him. It was just the most touching, wonderful moment. I've done that a lot. And why? Because I'd want somebody to do that for me.
Mm.
If I get to that point, but it was just so wonderful to hear everything from him and his wife and his daughter, and just a wonderful, wonderful time.
And Tom doesn't want to say this, but people should know he did reduce his fee for this.
I did, yes. I cut way back on the fee.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, there was a fee because he wouldn't let me pay for lunch.
Oh, see, there you go.
So he had to pay for lunch. Well, he didn't have to pay for lunch, but he refused to let me pay for lunch.
Yeah.
But those are the moments in life. Well, today is a moment in life to see you. I have not seen you in a long time, Dave, and I always admired you. You were always very, very nice to me. One of the things I'm most proud of in my life, and people still just go, particularly in Minnesota, tend to get a little political. I love a couple of guys, more than that, but there's a couple of guys I absolutely love them. And one of them is named Mike Gelfand. And the other one is Mike Lindell. Try to find one thing they have in common.
Yeah.
One thing.
Well, I did have a bad coke habit.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about Tom and I, and
Jesus.
I don't want to be too mushy here, but the thing about Tom and I is we went through this period of rage, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you go through something like that, and then you put it aside, and you become friends again, you really love each other. That's something, that's a bond that can't be broken.
There's no question. And I am so happy about it because, you got conservative. Oh, you're so this. You're like, you don't know me. You don't know me at all, as a matter of fact.
But we got to get to a point where I want to be able to do that, to take an honest look at differences, and then kind of come to some kind of accommodation.
Absolutely.
Firstly, realizing I ain't perfect. I mean, a lot of the stuff I believed. I grew up as a tax and spend liberal. Are you kidding? Some things don't work. You can't dump some tons of money at some things.
Yep.
Some things do.
Yep.
Some things with a Head Start program or an equal opportunity program work. I gotta be able to admit some of this stuff. Geez, I'm looking at this, and
one thing we've all learned, I think, is that no amount of money will solve the problem of our schools today.
No.
And I'm not talking just about public schools, because they get the, they're the ones who are constantly under attack.
Mm-hmm.
But also, the people who are attacking them, their kids don't go to public schools. But it's just, they tried it in New York. All these millionaires came along. Bill Gates, he throws $1 billion into it. It didn't work. It just didn't work.
One thing a lot of people don't know is that the U.S. schools are among the highest funded in the entire world.
Yep.
I think we're in the top.
Right.
We're in the top 3 in the entire world.
Yep.
Linda McDonald and I went to a program at Roosevelt High School, and we were trying to take an English class. and teach these kids how to put out a newspaper.
Was that the one
Oh,
my dad
And
was
this
involved
is
in?
the one your dad was in.
Really?
Oh yeah. And
Oh.
there was I met one of the best kids in the world. He's a Cambodian refugee named Nimmer, and he was a shooter for WCCO. I've never seen a kid better than this.
Mm.
He's got a natural instinct. But we get there and you know, 5 kids got their heads on the desk.
Yeah.
And I'm looking
know,
at
I-
I can watch them
that's
take
right.
down a 26-year-old teacher. Because they're sitting in the back of the room, MF and the rest of the things, and you got
Oh,
you
yeah.
got 5 young Somali women wearing tennis shoes and some Hmong kids who want to learn and some white kids sitting in there. And I'm thinking, come on, you and you're going to take down this whole class. I want to, you know,
Right.
geez,
Well, that was the
it ain't
first,
working.
that was the first thing that hit me when I was speaking to a class, like a communications class or something at St. Louis Park High School. Sitting right next to me as I talked was a kid who was sleeping, and I made a joke about it or something. And you know, I looked back at the teacher, and he kind of shook his head. And what I learned later is that the kids who fall asleep, the teachers are probably happy that they fall asleep because
Yeah.
you know, because they're not getting any fights or anything,
Yeah.
and they just accept it because they figure, well, the kid's better off sleeping here than somewhere else. No, and a lot of those kids didn't sleep well at night. Maybe they were hungry. Maybe they were out. I don't know. But that's just a little snapshot of public school. Now, on the other hand, all 3 kids of mine went to St. Louis Park High School, and they got good educations to the extent that they wanted to, because it kind of works that way.
But if I'm sending a kid to SBA, she ain't getting the kind of education I want. You got to mix it up.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to know
Yeah.
who the predators are. You got to know how to get along. You got to find out the brothers. You got to do the nines. You can't just go with rich white kids. Come on.
And the pub at you know, at a lot of public schools, some private ones, but a lot of public schools, teachers typically last about a month.
A month?
It's not uncommon at all.
Oh
Well, that's
my
about how
God.
long my oldest son, he had taught for 17 years. And then he said, I'm going to go back to St. Louis Park and teach. And I mean, a lot of these teachers who quit in the last few years, they're in therapy right now.
It's that bad, huh?
Well, there's a lot of them suffer from post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
So what do you do in retirement? I'm still not there. I can't imagine you playing golf. I can't
No, well,
imagine you
don't say-
collecting. I mean, you can't
don't
hand
say
around
Don't say retirement.
Well,
It's a
all
February
right,
award.
retirement. Oh,
Yeah.
Senior citizen.
He's working hard.
Now, when you walk out of here for the last time,
Mm-hmm.
you could volunteer in a class. I mean, not a class,
No, I
but in some
understand that.
classroom
I
settings.
understand
You
that.
could go over to the University of Minnesota. Now, granted, you'd have to be an adjunct and labeled, not a professor, but
Mhm.
but you could do a bunch of stuff.
I would love to do that, as a matter of fact. Yeah, about half of this town, though, would never want me to do that. I mean, this town literally, as far as Tom Bernard is concerned, is split right in half. They're very nice to me, or they can't stand me. And of course, they've never met me, so I don't know how that's possible. Well, because what you guys were just talking about, I'll just throw this out very quickly. It just happens that the lead story this morning in the news, which is, kind of hard to believe, but it's kind of what you guys were talking about. They had to change. A college is changing its logo because kids can't read cursive.
Yes.
Well,
George-
it's funny you should say that, because I was talking to this friend of mine who's a volunteer at the Eden Prairie Local News,
Mhm.
which is a bunch of volunteers doing a great job, and their logo is in cursive.
Right.
And I called Jeff Straight, my friend who works there, and I said, what the hell is that? And he said, what do you mean? I said, nobody knows what cursive is anymore.
They don't. You're right.
You're just appealing to people over the age of 70 there with that logo. And he was very defensive about it. But it's funny you should say that, because, yeah, it's true. I couldn't write in cursive when they taught it. So I kind of understand.
Well, you've seen my handwriting, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got some of the
thinking
worst
you're
handwriting
too
on
sensitive
earth.
about the critical half. I think the important story is that you walk over and look at the radio play, and 8 people for whom with whom you were competitors in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
welcome you there.
It was
And
wonderful.
there's a kind of sense that with time and so on, that whether they liked you or not, you were good at what you did. And two, that at this stage of the game, we can admit our imperfections.
Mhm.
But
Well, hell, that puts you in a ball game.
that atmosphere,
You know?
that
I agree.
atmosphere was very, it was provocative back in the day. You know, we were competing. We were
Mhm.
competing for numbers. And so, yeah, so when you're done, you all get back together. But we can sort of see how people tend to kind of, you know, when they have that spirit. And nowadays we're split down the middle because it's not just the politicians, it's Russia, for example, China, for example. They're putting out all these bots with false information.
Right.
Big
Yeah.
story in the paper yesterday about the Russian bots, and they were out there telling lies about about the hurricane and the relief of the hurricane.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, and that's why they do it. They do it because they want us to hate each other, and we fall for it.
Well, our political parties want us to hate
Sure,
each other, which
sure.
I don't really understand at all. You see some things going on right now. It's like, are you kidding me? First of all, and again, I don't even reveal who I'm going to vote for, and to tell you the truth, 100% haven't made up my mind who I'm going to vote for yet. But to see the things that were going on yet, to call a guy who used to be president of the United States a fascist, that's a bit far to go, isn't it? I mean, if you think the guy's a prick or whatever, good for you. But okay, as a nice Jewish boy, I want to ask you this, because this is the take that I got from it, Mike.
Mhm.
Growing up in North Minneapolis, I got a little sensitive toward that stuff.
Mhm.
By calling Donald Trump a fascist and all these other things and Hitler and blah, 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 they're realizing they're losing the Jewish vote now. The way Jews are being treated in America now is disgusting. And
Well, I think that, yeah, because Jews, if they're listening to everything, they're not going to vote at all.
that's
Donald
a
Trump,
possibility.
Donald Trump did say that if he loses, it'll be the Jews' fault.
He did not.
He absolutely said that. And when you hear things like that, it's like you realize that you're not being treated like a human being. You're just a vote or a non-vote.
And I still like this guy, Dave.
Yeah.
Is that
I understand.
But the rhetoric is
It's
so
disgusting.
heated up.
Yes.
What do you expect? And that's, of course, that's going to be what it's, it's both sides are heating up that rhetoric, and it had to happen because that's the time we live in. We're taught to hate everybody else.
But it's your boys that are hating the Jews more than anybody.
Look, the Jews have always been victims, and they've always been easy. I mean, go back to World War II when you had people like Henry Ford and Lindbergh who were pals with Hitler.
Lindbergh loved you. What are you talking?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
Little Falls, Minnesota, baby.
I think they felt that by receiving Hitler's Medal of Honor, they were probably working just to bring both sides together.
Yes, that's it.
So the point being is that the hatred of Jews. I mean, I saw the other day Ted Cruz is in trouble, right?
Yeah,
he could actually lose,
right?
Yep. And he was on Fox News. I saw him on Fox News because I watch that occasionally, and he was begging for money.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, basically what he was saying was, the Jews are after me. You know who he blamed for the fact that he might lose?
You.
Two popular victims. One, of course, George Soros. It was George Soros's fault. And then he added Schumer too, two Jews. And I don't think I'm being overly sensitive when I see what he's doing there.
Well, George Soros is one of the worst human beings on earth.
Well, he's not one of the best, but I don't think he's one of the worst.
I like to go back. I'd like to go back to the truth kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what bothers me most, and I can understand the people who disliked Harris's policies and some of the things that first the procedures at the border, where I thought the Biden administration really made some errors, but I am troubled by the basic fact of not being able to recognize the truth, but by by Trump, I'm recognizing sometimes where he's saying to me, I didn't say that. I mean, it was like me getting out of the car saying I wasn't driving the car.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you were a little boy. You were driving a car. I
Mhm.
got that. Admit it. You're driving a car, and that's one of the basic issues for me.
Mm.
And I want to be able to deal with that
Truth.
in a way that's
Truth just doesn't matter anymore.
No.
it
Yeah,
doesn't.
and we spend our lives. I mean, we screwed up a number of stories, but Jesus, I always did try to tell the truth.
Yep.
I mean, I did try to get.
Back
I
in the
did
day.
try to get to that, and they made journalism out to be a scapegoat. However, there are no such things as facts anymore. No, there are.
Yeah.
There are.
Mhm.
You know.
Well, there was a story today about the owner of the Los Angeles Times. Los Angeles Times
Oh, I
was
saw that.
one,
Yeah.
one of the best newspapers in the world
Mhm.
at one time.
Mhm.
Now it's owned by a billionaire. What's the guy? I can't remember the guy's name. It's a tough one.
I just read the story this
Yeah.
morning too, and I can't remember.
Yeah, it's something Shung, I think. And so he is now told the editorial board that they can't endorse any candidate. So that's a newspaper tradition. It goes back a long ways.
Mhm.
And guess what other paper has been told they can't endorse any candidate?
Star Tribune.
The Minnesota Star Tribune.
Yep.
Yep.
There you have it.
Yep.
And why can't they now?
Well, in the case of LA, it's because the owner is a guy who spent a lot of time groveling before Trump, trying to get a
Oh,
spot in
okay.
his administration.
Okay.
So obviously it's just his politics, that's all. But of course he doesn't say that. He says, well, what I want you to do is and he's talking to the editorial board, I want you to do a in-depth analysis of both candidates, and talk about the good things and the bad things. And that's not for an opinion page. I mean, that's fine for the reporters, but that's not the job of the opinion page.
Right.
And so they had, of course, as you read, the woman who was in charge of the opinion page resigned.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
quit.
Now, I don't know about the Star Tribune, why they decided to do this, but I do know it was evident. Well, Nim, you saw this right away, and I did too, just because we're sensitive to this. When they fired a bunch of people there, right?
Yeah, they fired 6 of them, and they got 6 new editors.
6 new editors, and they clearly decided that they wanted to be the happy news reporters.
Oh yeah.
The news isn't happy.
No, it's not.
And so that was part of that whole thing. Well, we're not going to be divisive and endorse a candidate. I mean, that's a tradition that goes back to.
But it's disingenuous, Stretch. Of course they got a candidate. The candidate is Harris.
Yeah.
Well,
sure.
Of course they got it.
Right.
So come out and say it.
Yeah.
And our newsroom's liberal, Tommy. Yeah, we can admit they are. They
Yep.
all are.
Yep.
But there's a kind of fabric in the best of them that goes through saying, tell the truth.
Hmm.
And admit that this position has got some weaknesses, and we were all trying to say that we're down the middle. No, I want you to be more edgy.
Yeah.
But I also want you to realize that defunding the Minneapolis Police Department was a crock. Are you kidding?
Right. That's
Jesus.
unbelievable.
I mean, look at that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you gotta go look at
but
that.
it didn't
if you're a
last
reporter.
in all fairness.
And George Floyd wasn't a national hero. You can't make him out to be
Well,
a figure.
well, that's
Did
right.
Derek Chauvin step over the line and did he kill him? I believe he did.
Yeah.
And I believe the 3rd precinct harbored some thumpers. But are cops all bad? No, they aren't. And if you
course
got to
not.
have cops, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's where I'm thinking you got to roll in this society as we.
Well, yeah,
continue
because
forward.
I will defend the police until my dying day. I've seen some things in North Minneapolis you don't want to see. My favorite cop story of all, though, Sergeant Ugly was his nickname, and he wasn't ugly. They just called him Sergeant. I think he had an ugly persona. In other words, he might have had an ugly personality.
Yeah.
I like the guy or whatever. Told me a story though that they got a call from I guess it was like Plymouth and Penn, whatever. It was on Plymouth Avenue. So the cops show up and they come to the door and the woman comes out and said, my husband has been shot and killed. Goes, what do you mean your husband's been shot and killed? Well, we have all these people over. He said, they're still here. You go, yeah, they're all still in the living room. So they're all sitting around. You know, there are 4 people on the couch, a couple of people in the chairs, and all the rest of it. So Sergeant Ugly comes in. He goes, "What are you doing?" And the people go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Why are you still here? Somebody's been killed, from what I understand. You're going to have to get the hell out of here. We got some work to do." So these people all get up and leave except for one guy. And he's just leaning back. He's asleep. He's got his head back with his mouth hanging open. And he comes over and he goes, "Will you wake that asshole up? He's got to go." I said, "Sarge, that's the guy that's dead." He goes, "Okay, then you can stay."
Who says they don't have a sense of
A
humor?
sense of-
Yeah.
But
But
you know, the interesting thing about that was that after the George Floyd was killed, you know, there was a cry from some people to defund the police.
Mhm.
But the thing about it was it didn't last long, and because the community is as disparate as it is, it pretty much came together to say, no, we need the cops. And that white
Yeah.
people said it, and black
Mhm.
people
Yep.
said
Yeah,
it, liberals said
absolutely.
it, conservatives said it.
Good.
And you're right, it did come fairly quickly, and it came from people that conservatives wouldn't like. I mean, Fry said it was crazy. So there is a way. I think there's a ground for us to agree on some things.
Absolutely.
One, you got to have law and order. 2, you got to have public schools. 3, you got to have opportunities to get into those public schools. And 4, you got to have families who give a damn about their kids and how they're doing.
And I'd also say you can't kill a guy at 36th in Chicago.
No, you can't.
I mean,
And you can't arrest a guy at 2:30 in the morning in Robbinsdale for being black, wearing a pork pie hat, going to Cubs. You know, who gets,
I go to the Cub all the time.
I'm sorry, you know, you can't pull him over. Let him go. He ain't raising hell.
it's the broken window thing.
Yeah, it is.
God, we got it, man. We got like 2 minutes left. That's it. The
You
hell's
still
wrong
haven't
with
told us what you're going to do in when you walk out of here.
when I walk out?
I'd like to know what you're thinking about.
Well, I would probably like to do a couple more years
Okay.
of this show. I would like to do that. I don't know if I will, but I would like to do that.
You know you will.
Well, I
You'll go
will.
until the last dog.
Yeah, that's probably true. Because well, Dave, let me tell you the very quick story about this. I'm 15 years old. I'm at Cleveland Park in North Minneapolis. No, in fact, I wasn't even 15. I was about 11 or 12. And this friend of mine runs up to me and goes, "Your mom is on KDWB." I said, "What?" I said, "Your mom is being interviewed on KDWB radio right now." I said, "Okay." So we tuned in. And apparently Sam Sherwood, who was running that at the time, you remember Sam Sherwood?
Of course,
Mike? I
yeah.
thought so, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about Sam Sherwood.
Well, he
briefly.
was just, you know, he was a rock and roll disc jockey.
Okay.
Legend. He became the general manager.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
a very, very big deal. So I'm listening to my mother talk to this guy, and they're trying to reach my brother Terry, who's in Vietnam in the United States Marine Corps. This is back in 67,
Wow.
something like that. So I'm listening to this whole deal, and they never did find my brother because he was, you know, long range reconnaissance patrol. So he's probably nowhere near the camp or anything. So she never did get to talk to him, but I heard my mother, you know, all excited about this. I couldn't wait to hear my brother's voice from the other side of the world. It never did happen. But I do remember that day was the day I said, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to reach out to people and say, hey, we got your son halfway across the world. Let's talk to your son. That was the day I knew that I was going to get into radio.
Well, you know, yeah. And I grew up with radio.
Yeah.
So, you know, I never thought I would be on radio because I figured my voice was just I couldn't overcome that.
That's the only reason I hired you.
I know, but but no one else would have.
Oh God, that was you know, looking back at that, I guess that's probably a good place to close out. They're like, what's the deal with Gelfand? I know you're friends and all the rest of it, but you know, he doesn't have a radio voice. And he said, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly right. He doesn't have a radio voice. So let's go with that. I mean, look at that group. I got one nice Jewish boy. And then I got another nice Jewish boy who's 6'6". What the hell? What's that all
Yeah.
about? That's what I'd like to know.
Oh, you know, and there were like 7 of us on the air at the same time.
At the same time.
And none of them sounded like any of the others.
Nope.
And that is something you don't hear very often.
Oh, it was absolutely wonderful. The whole Dan Culhane, I still miss him, died at a very young age,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but just a great, great guy. I am one of the luckiest human beings on earth. There's no question about it. I got to do what I wanted to do. I get to do it at a very high level because I was supported by, Dave Hamilton. And you got to give Steinmetz, you got to give Steiny credit, man. He just stood back and watched it build.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't try, you got to do this, you got to do that. He just stood there and watched.
Although he did say that, like the first time I was on the air, you got to get rid of that guy.
Oh yeah, he wanted to get rid of you.
Yeah.
He wanted to get rid of you.
Hey,
That
every
is
job
true.
I've ever had, there's been someone overseeing me who said, you got to get rid of that guy.
Well, not here.
No, not here, but.
This is the first job you've ever had that nobody ever wanted to get rid of you. Is that
Oh
what
yeah,
you're saying?
yeah, no question.
Well, you guys kind of made my life, my elder statesman period. At 84, I'm just honored to be here among you two.
Oh yeah, it's
And
not an honor
Gelfand,
to
the
have you
sweetest
in.
human being I know.
Jesus, you know some mean people.
We got to get Dave back in here one of these days. soon.
Anytime you want to come in, you're more than welcome to come on in. Dave, you and Marcia treated me so well sitting on your look. I'm a kid from North Minneapolis. It's, I'm 33, 32 years old. All of a sudden I'm sitting on TV with two people I've been watching on TV my whole life. I was terrified, but you guys took that out of me. After about 1 minute, I was like, oh, this is fine.
Yeah, you were fine.
But
You were an
guys
iconic
wonderful.
figure sitting on a boat, not knowing how to hold a fishing rod.
That's true.
Oh God, the only
That's
thing,
very true.
the only fish I've ever looked for is gefilte
Yeah,
fish.
Gefelta.
Yeah.
That's the route you're going to take.
I wouldn't know what to do either. I mean, but like, you gotta
I told
hook
Bernard
things.
that
I don't
fishing
know.
was a spiritual experience. He had this quizzical look on me. Well, what the hell is this?
and they smell too.
Yeah.
Fish
They
do
do.
smell. That is very, very true. We'll close with this information. Do you know what National Day is today in America?
No.
National Baloney Day. So the three of us, the four of us get together and just talk BS the whole time. No, it's such an honor to have someone of your stature come in to do this show. Mike came to me and said, what do you think? I said, God, absolutely. Let's go. But this market, very, very few of the iconic people like you and Marcia, Mike Gelfand, writing for you wrote for every publication in the world when I first
He
met
got
you.
fired from every publication.
I got
Well,
fired
they
too.
would have liked to have fired
Yeah,
him.
like to have.
No, when I quit the Wall Street Journal, it wasn't my thing. It was prestigious, but it wasn't my thing.
Yeah,
And I thought, well, I've been a complete failure here. I don't fit in.
really.
And so I told them I was leaving, and they said, well, we can put you in another bureau if you'd like. I thought, what are you talking about? I failed here. So who knows?
What are you gonna do?
They were very nice to me, but
So,
not so
Last
much at
thing
the
is
Tribune.
cut the humble shit. You're an iconic
Cut the
figure here and you're
humble
rich.
shit.
We'll leave you with that.
That's how we're gonna go away. All right, we'll leave with that. But Dave, you got to come back as often as you want. I loved having you in studio, and that's not sucking up to you. I really did. He's not going to talk. Okay, we're done.
It's humility. It's a lost art.
I don't know what's that. Humility. I don't know what that is.
No,
Oh, look, he doesn't even defend me. You see that?
Yeah, no, hey, we did
Way to go, Mike.
All right.
All right, that's going to do it.
We're
We'll
outta
talk to
here.
you tomorrow.
Got a picture in my noggin reminds me of this was before. Every time I hear the sing, reminds me how you talking my